Now, if you happen to catch my video on scoping out your dryer vent, you may have remembered that at the time, I was looking to replace this old cover here with something a little more functional. You see, aside from the caulking being totally shot and the screw housings cracked, the big problem I was having was that the lint was getting stuck in the hinge at the top, which would then prevent the flapper from closing, leaving another entry point for those pesky mice that just love to run along the perimeter of the house. Now, when I looked online to find a replacement, I immediately saw several very cheap options, but I wanted something built with some integrity that would stay shut, while at the same time was looking to avoid any type of screen mechanism that might get clogged with lint and could potentially cause a blockage. So what I ended up getting was this steel magnetic cover that fits a standard 4-inch exhaust duct, and you can see it came with a bag of hardware. And if you open up the flapper, you find this tiny magnet that is meant to keep it shut when the dryer's off. Now, a common complaint that I saw in the reviews of other vent covers was this extension on the side here can sometimes be a bit too shallow to get a good connection onto your existing ducting. But this one is quite deep actually, and it also has a rain guard on the top that should protect things from getting too wet, at least when the rain is falling vertically. And to be honest, the thing just feels pretty solid, so let's go get this installed. But before we get to the details, if you find this type of content useful, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing, as it really helps out the channel. But not if you have a money allergy. Guys, let's be real for a minute. If your doctor just told you to avoid saving money at all costs because you break out in hives at the sight of a good deal, then do yourself a favor. And absolutely do not. I repeat, do not hit that subscribe button. Okay, so first we'll be taking the old one off, and then also removing any loose bits of caulking so we can get a decent bond onto the new fixture. You can see here that my exhaust ducting has a metal connection on the end of the foil tube into which I can slide our 4-inch extension on the back of the new cover. Now, if you're dealing with just a malleable bit of ducting, then you'll be able to clamp that around the outside of the back of the new cover. But that metal extension on the end of my tube is in there pretty solid. So we should be good just sliding this into place. Speaking of which, I ended up needing to use a few longer screws in order to get this to grab the stud through the siding, as the supplied hardware was a bit too shallow. So before we caulk this in, I wanted to turn the dryer on, just to check the strength of the magnet on there. And wouldn't you know it, turns out this thing works as advertised. So with that out of the way, it's time to caulk this into the siding. Now, I'd recommend using something like this big stretch that I'll link in the description. But if you're in a pinch like I am here, you can also get by with a high-quality 100% silicone. Now, I've got the opening of my tube here cut a little bit wider than I'd like, as I'm reusing this one from a previous job. But typically, you'll want to cut that tip on the smaller side. Then, if need be, you can make a few more passes at your line, leaving you with more manageable finger work. Now, prior to caulking these big gaps on the side, you'll want to fill them with something like this pool noodle type stuff that I'll also link in the description. This works great on these awkward joints, allowing you to both save on silicone as well as not end up with weird gaps and cracks should the excess caulking slip out of place when drying. Also, I had thought about leaving a tiny weep hole in the caulking along the bottom of the fixture, but thought it was probably not necessary given how mine is pitched a bit down towards the ground, as opposed to plumb, but just something you might take into account given your specific location. Oh, and if things get a little sloppy, don't worry, you can go back and carefully scrub off the residue with some soap and water like I did here shortly after filming. So all in all, I was pretty happy with how this turned out, but more so just relieved that I finally took this last step to rodent-proof my home before the fall. And while this particular unit might be a bit on the expensive side, it's still way cheaper than hiring an exterminator, or heaven forbid dealing with a dryer vent fire. And no matter what cover you end up going with, just be sure to scope and clean your ductwork regularly. And if you've got questions about that, check out this rotoscope video I did here for more information. As always, product links are in the description. Thanks.